We're gonna be ranking some Call of Duty Zombies maps. Here we go. We're going Treyarch only. I'm gonna X out the never playeds here from Cold War, but otherwise, here we go. I'm gonna start with Noctur and Toten, ranking solely off of vibes, completely off of vibes. If I like the map, if I don't like the map, and Noctur and Toten, it was the first. It's fun to play, but there's absolutely nothing special about it either because of how bare bones it is, which is to be expected. So I think that lands it in a nice, fine ranking here in the C tier. Followed by that, we have Verruct. Verruct introduced your 4 basic perks, which is really quite nice. It's a fun atmosphere. It's a really challenging map, which can be a good challenge, but sometimes a little too much too. But I think for me, it's going to go as a good map. Next, I have Shinonuma. Shinonuma is an amazing map as far as high rounding goes, but it is incredibly basic, and I'm actually not a huge fan of the Shinonuma layout myself. So I think I have to take Shinonuma and put it also in the fine tier, actually below Nocturne and Toten. I don't think it's necessarily a bad map, and it does have the perks. It did bring a wonder weapon, but it is what it is. Next, we have Darius. Darius is, of course, legendary. It added teleportation. It added the Pack-a-Punch machine, which is extremely important. And it's a pretty fun map all in all. And it's just a good intro map a lot of people played. And I think I like it enough to put it up into the great tier, although likely towards the lower end of the great tier. Next, we have Keynote or Toten. Keynote or Toten, I mean, it is a classic. I think it's way too overhyped. It's nothing too extremely special when compared with the Reese. I mean, it did add the Thunder Gun, but aside from that, it didn't really add anything of much importance. The Nova Crawlers, which nobody likes, but yeah, it's a decent map, and I think again, it is a lot of people's first map they played too. Me personally, my first map I ever played was actually Call of the Dead, but I'm gonna go with Keynote or Toten in the good tier. It's a good map. It's nothing special in my opinion, and I think without the fact of it maybe being somebody's first zombies map, it's just okay. Um, Next we have 5. 5 is really cool, I like what it tried to do. Really cool, unique cast of characters, of course. Love playing as the JFK gamer. Brought the Winner's Howl, which is probably the biggest L for the map, as it's a terrible wonder weapon, but it is unique, at least. And the Pentagon Thief is a really cool boss round zombie that actually rivals many of the others to come later. So, again, 5, really solid. It is really hard, and the wonder weapon's pretty lacking. So again, I'm going to put this in good, but I'm going to put it down below Verruct. Next, we have Ascension. Ascension's pretty cool. Introduced the Gersh device, which is really nice. Also, the Matryoshka dolls. The monkeys are a cool feature, and they add a little bit of challenge to otherwise really easy map. Really enjoy Ascension. It's a fun layout. Shooting the rocket's good, and it just did a good job. So for that, it's going to go into the great tier, but below Darius. Next, we have Call of the Dead. I personally really enjoy Call of the Dead. The biggest eyesore for Call of the Dead is the wonder weapons, of course. They're pretty lacking. But as lacking as they are very original and unique, and I do have to give it credit for that. And of course, if you want to go play the remastered version, you can get stronger versions of the guns. George Romero's a really cool boss concept, especially for the time. The cast of characters is amazing, and overall, it's just a really fun map. It's not quite enough for me to go into the S tier yet, but I am definitely going to put it at the top of A tier here. Following that up, we have Shangri-La, which, according to Astra Malorum, is actually located on Mars, which is pretty interesting. Shangri-La is interesting, where it does have a one-off wonder weapon, which is fantastic. The 31 JGB, whatever, baby gun, is pretty sick. Everybody loves that gun, I would assume. It's a very unique working wonder weapon while also being extremely powerful. The map itself has a pretty tight layout, of course. That's not quite ideal for rounding, but the Easter egg itself does operate pretty uniquely as well. Pretty cool map. And overall, I have to put Shangri-La in the good tier again. I think it's going to go right between Verruct and 5 for me. Next, we have Moon, the conclusion for Black Ops 1. This is a really good conclusion, very neat Easter egg, definitely the most in-depth Easter egg up to this point, especially with blowing up the Earth. The color scheme of the map isn't fantastic, but that's easily forgiven for the Black Ops 1 engine. And the wonder weapon for the map with the wave gun, definitely very unique, very interesting. Probably the biggest pain on Moon is just the spaceman, because he doesn't actually give you anything and he's just kind of annoying, but it's overall a really solid map. And this is again going to make it into the A tier for me, directly between Darice and Ascension. Actually, no, you know what? We're going to put it above Darice. I think that's pretty fair. Alright, next we have train shit. I don't know what's been going on in the last few years. Some people seem to apparently like this map. It's fucking terrible. It's been terrible for as long as I can remember. And it doesn't work well, it doesn't flow well. They had to use fog to hide the unfinished portions of the map. The bus is really annoying, waiting for it. The jet gun is horrible, obviously. The perk system is just really annoying. I mean, transit is an easy F. Nobody genuinely enjoys transit unless you're just goofing around with friends, but at that point, it's more of a friend slop game than an actual zombies map. So, next, an even easier placement is Bus Depot. Bus Depot is extremely hard. There's nothing to it. It's a really bad survival map, and that's going to put it in F again. Awful. Now, Farm has a little bit more. There are some perks, Pack Punch. Like, it can get you somewhere, but it's easily outshined by what comes after it, and honestly, Farm is pretty forgettable. It's not terrible per se, but I don't enjoy playing it, and so it's definitely going to go in bad for me, but definitely not quite as awful as overall Transit or Bus Depot. And then Town's a little unique. They took a piece of Transit that's actually pretty enjoyable. They condensed it down into a nice survival map. It's a really healthy, good challenge. It's a good intro for new players. It was very enjoyable at the time to play. I think a lot of people coming into Black Ops 2 for the first time, this was definitely their introduction to zombies. Definitely just a really fun map and 2. And I think it's kind of the best part of what came out of Transit. So obviously, it doesn't have the features of major maps or anything, but I think it's at least good enough for me to put it in the bottom of good tier. It is a enjoyable map to play. Now, Nuketown Zombies. Nuketown's just frustrating. Your perks come in at random. You could be up until round 20 without Jug on a 2-hit system. It's just really rough. It is a fun challenge. It's just not all that replayable, and it's really not my favorite. So for that, again, I'm gonna have to put it in bad above Farm. It's okay. It just doesn't really hit for me the same. Now going into the main DLC maps for Black Ops 2, we have Die Rise. Die Rise is interesting. In concept, it's really good, and it could have been really good, but it just lacked a lot. A lot of that did get solved in the remastered version of the map later in BO3 Customs, but we're only considering the original here, so I would say Die Rise for me, pre-patch Liquefiers probably would have been a little bit higher, but it's just a little bit of a mess of a map, which is kind of a theme between Transit and Die Rise both. So for that, Die Rise is going to make it all the way up into the fine tier, but definitely below Shinonuma. Next we have Mob of the Dead. Mob of the Dead gets a little bit too much glaze in my opinion sometimes. It's certainly not a bad map. It's a very good map, very cool cast of characters, very cool aura to the map. Did bring 2 very interesting wonder weapons too, with the Blender Gat and the Acid Gat. And the Asagat is very unique. It was the first kind of monkey bomb effect weapon, wonder weapon at least, besides the Black Ops 1 crossbow. And it's a very cool map, very good vibes. I do enjoy the Easter egg of it as well, but it's overall pretty simple map, and for actual rounding on it, it can get pretty old pretty quick. But you know, the Hell's Retriever, Hell's Redeemer is very good. For me, it does not quite make, no, it does make an S tier map for me, but it is not top of S by any means. It'll definitely be a bit lower. It's a really good map, but it's lacking the things that could make it a great map, or an excellent map, I should say. Uh, actually saying that, I think it's going to go very top of A tier for me. Next, we have Buried. Buried's a really cool map. This is actually personally my probably favorite map from Black Ops 2. It's really fun to play, super unique. It introduced so many one-off mechanics. There are really interesting perma perks. The Paralyzer, even though it's not a great high rounding wonder weapon, is certainly one of my favorite wonder weapons aesthetically and just to use. It's very fun. The Leroy mechanic's really cool. Everything to do with the witch's house and the maze, and the Easter egg's really fun too. So for me, Buried actually does make it to an excellent map. It was an S tier map. Very, I'd say a little bit underrated from time to time, but it is, I think it's pretty universally agreed on that it's a really good map. Next, we have Origins. Origins, to me, is, of course, it's just a really good map. It has implemented the whole 4 unique wonder weapons. All of the quests for the stabs are very awesome. The Panzer's really cool. The Easter egg's great. The biggest lacking thing for Origins, which is hard to pin on it because there weren't any boss fights yet at this time anyway, but there is, of course, no boss fight. That really would have taken the Easter egg to the top tier. But overall, for the time it came out, it is a really solid map. It's really beloved for a reason. I do think it's a bit overplayed at this point, which will come up again here momentarily as well. It's definitely not a bad map at all. Very, very good map. Definitely excellent. And it is going to make it into my S tier, but it is not going to be towards the top of the S tier because it is a really good map, but it's very, yeah, I feel like it's extremely overplayed at this point. And you can't really go wrong with Origins, but it just kind of gets old after a while, which can happen to any map. Next, I have Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil, extremely innovative. First map for BO3, a great opener, and it wasn't necessarily liked as much at the beginning, and I myself am definitely part of that as well. But once you go through, once you experience the Easter egg, this technically had the first, like, pseudo boss fight. It's more of a boss fight than Origins, but less of a boss fight than Horizon Drak. And that's probably one of the more lackluster parts of the Easter egg, honestly, but the Apothicon Servant, obviously, probably best wonder weapon of all time. The Margot's such a cool addition. The vibe of the map, the character cast is very cool. Overall, Shadows of Evil is definitely going to make it into S tier for me and above Buried at that. Currently putting it in the #1 spot. However, it might get overshadowed a little bit later. We'll see. The Giant feels a little strange ranking the Giant off of Darius. For me, if anything, this is just a copy of Darius. It's not bad, but it's a little bit unremarkable too. And this was certainly, obviously, my least played map by far on BO3, and it's just kind of there. It's not bad, it's Darius, but I think for that, I'm going to put it right next to Darius, just below it, because I think the original's just a little bit better. Next, we're coming up on Horizon Drak. Horizon Drak is obviously a fantastic map. Again, has the 4 elemental wonder weapon style going on with the bows. The bows are incredibly unique. It did bring back the Panzer, but made it different enough to feel like a new enemy. The Easter egg is awesome. The first full-fledged Treyarch boss fight, obviously, very, very interesting. The Drak's an easy S tier, for sure, for me. And it again is plagued a little bit by the overplayed aspect from Origins, largely due to the kind of tanking of Zetsubo no Shima on launch. But it's still gonna make it into my S tier, and it's gonna go right between Buried and Origins. Next up, we got Zetsubo no Shima. Zetsubo no Shima, ranking purely off of launch, would have been really low, probably like a C. The map didn't really work. There were a lot of issues with it, but now a lot of those are kind of resolved, and in hindsight, the map is really cool, and I think one of the most unique experiences in Black Ops 3. And it does have a cool looking boss fight. The boss fight isn't fantastic, but it is unique. The Wonder Weapon is really cool in my opinion, the KT4. I think it's really nice, or the Masamune upgraded. And the Thrashers can be a bit annoying, but I like the uniqueness of them compared to a lot of other sort of boss zombies that you find. So for that reason, I think Zetsubo no Shima, it's going to be a bit lower for the BO3 maps, but it's still going to make it easily into B tier for me. And it's going to go right between Kino der Toten and Verrückt. Next we have Gorod Krovi. Fantastic map. Probably the weakest point of this entire map for me is just the Valkyries. They're a little bit annoying, but they are cool and unique. The Manglers are really fun. The map aura itself really fun. The shield that it brings is really cool. The Wonder Weapon, unfortunately, it's a little bit underpowered at higher rounds, but it is just such a fun Wonder Weapon to use and so unique that I can't help but love it. The Easter egg is amazing. Easily the best boss fight in BO3 by far, in my opinion. It's just so fun. The two stages, especially your first time going through it, you don't really expect that. And yeah, it's just a really fun map. For me, this is actually going to make it again up into S tier, and it's going to go just below Buried and Der Eisendrache. Next, we've got, I'm going to amend that. I'm going to go Gorod Krovi right above Der Eisendrache, actually. Yeah. And looking at that, I think Buried needs to actually come down here. I like this. Okay. That's pretty solid. Now we'll go into Revelations. Revelations is interesting. It is kind of what we asked for at the time, and it's not a bad map, but the Easter egg was certainly lackluster for what it could have been. And obviously, it could have been the Great War map, all of that, but it can't really hold that against it. It is what it is. However, it did have two recycled wonder weapons. It is really fun to be able to use the Apothicon Servant and the Thunder Gun at the same time, but it's just, you feel almost too overpowered on this map, and it's just kind of bland after the first initial hit of, oh wow, I'm going to Shangri-La, I'm going to Der Eisendrache, I'm going to Kino der Toten, but it overall just kind of falls short of what it could have been, and long term, this has actually been the least replayable map from BO3 for me, aside from maybe the Giant, but the Giant kind of just rides off of Darius. So I'm going to actually put Revelations also in the B tier, except for this one's going to go between Shangri-La and 5. Still a good map, but it just has a lot of issues, and it could have been so much more, and it's kind of a disappointing end to something as amazing as Black Ops 3 Zombies. Of course, we did get Chronicles, but yeah. Now going into Black Ops 4. So 9 for me is a really unique setting, very interesting. The Wonder Weapon is visually very cool, but not the greatest to use, which is kind of a theme throughout BO4. I mean, you just kind of use the Helion Salvo over the Wonder Weapons most of the time. Maybe Dead of the Night, you can make an argument for Alistair's, but overall, it's kind of the Helion Salvo. So you can't really discredit the Wonder Weapon based on that. You just kind of have to take it as it is. I really do like that Wonder Weapon. The boss fight is extremely cool. Fighting the elephant's really awesome. Having the crowd aspect around you is very cool, and the cordoned off parts of the map. The Easter egg does get really tedious sometimes with all the part fetch steps and everything, but it's not necessarily bad either. And it does suit the actual BO4 system fairly well as well. 9 for me is definitely a great map, but it is not anything too spectacular. And for that, I'm gonna definitely put it up here in the A tier between probably Call of the Dead and Moon. I think it's a really solid map, but just not quite as good as it could be. Next, we got Voyage of Despair. Nobody's gonna agree with this one. So I think Voyage of Despair is a really cool map. The biggest glaring issue with it, obviously, is it's on the Titanic, but the Easter egg and everything just doesn't really have a lot to do with that, and it's a little strange. But it is cool to just appreciate the fact that it is on the Titanic and how accurate it is. The Wonder Weapon's a little lackluster too, the Kraken, as far as usability, but it does look awesome. And again, you're going to use the Helion Salvo anyway. So it is pretty cool. Really actually enjoy the Easter egg, especially the boss fight. It's a really fun boss fight. And there are some issues. The layout of the map is definitely not my favorite, but I think this is easily, again, a great tier map, honestly. But I think it's going to go right down here below Ascension for me. Next, we got Blood of the Dead. Blood of the Dead is an interesting reimagining of Mob of the Dead. It did add the Magma Gat variant, but a lot of reused assets here. Brutus comes back. And of course, the Easter egg is just super tedious. It is interesting and in depth, which I do appreciate the level of in depth that maybe a 9 or a Voyage of Despair Easter egg has. But this is a little too far with the, 40 something bird spawns and all of those. It's certainly not a bad map, but it's by no means fantastic. And so I think for that, it's going to make it into the bottom of C tier. Next, coming up, we got Classified. It's a remake of 5. They did improve the winner's hell here, so it gets a little bit of points for that. I think the biggest knock on Classified over 5 is no Pentagon Thief, and that's just one of the best parts of 5 for me. And also the cast is just the original characters. We don't get the really cool and interesting cast that we got in 5. So for that, it's fine. I think it's going to go just right here, right between Shionuma and Dairais. Definitely not bad at all, but it's just, I think it's a worse version of 5 in my opinion in a lot of ways. And the Easter egg is just stupid. Getting to around 150, especially when you really couldn't even get to around 150 on launch most of the time. Not a great map. Next I have Dead of the Night. Dead of the Night is extremely overhated in my opinion. It's definitely a hard learning curve map that is difficult to go with your first time playing it. But as soon as you learn the Easter egg and you actually know what to do, it's really actually quite unique, and it's cool to appreciate the in-depth nature of the Easter egg. Very interesting wonder weapon. The boss fight is a little bit lackluster with how easily you can cheese it, but that happens with a lot of the BO4 boss fights between Helion Salvo, or in this case the Silver Bullet Spitfire, but it is still overall really cool map. Really love the setting, really love the actual way the Easter egg plays out once you're familiar with Easter egg. And I think it's easily going to be a tier map for me, right above Mob of the Dead. Definitely not going to be a popular choice there. All right, and then Ancient Evil. Ancient Evil, again, absolutely love the setting and the set of the Gauntlet Wonder Weapons. Those are really quite awesome. Also, probably the Alistair's Annihilator and the Wonder Weapon and the Gauntlets are definitely my favorite Wonder Weapons across all of BO4. They're it's a very unique map. The Easter egg's really cool. The boss fight is really fun. I really just don't have anything negative to say about the map, and I feel like it's similar to 9 in concept, but I think it's just a little bit better. So for me, it's gonna go right between Mob of the Dead and Actually, no, it's gonna go right above 9, right below Call of the Dead. Now we have Alpha Omega. Terrible. It's a Nuketown remake. They did extend it into the bunker a little bit, but reused wonder weapons and not even nearly as cool as like the Magna Gat from Blood of the Dead. It's just literally elemental versions of the Mark II. The Easter egg's pretty annoying, honestly. The boss fight's super underwhelming. They just brought the Avogadro back. And honestly, for me personally and how much I enjoy the map, it's gonna go all the way down to a bad map, just right above Nuketown Zombies, honestly. maybe it's a slight improvement on the original, but it just also fell super flat with the drawn cutscenes and what should have happened there. Really quite annoying, honestly. And then Tag der Toten, you know, it's a really kind of cool expansion of Call of the Dead, and it did start going in the right direction. The ending to the Easter egg's a little annoying, you know, there's no actual boss fight. It's pretty kind of anticlimactic. There's a lot of just quotes you gotta stop and wait for. The ending itself is okay, but it's such an underwhelming ending compared to what could have been with the Cold War, or sorry, the Great War and all of that. And again, and then the Wonder Weapons. I mean, you got the Tundra Gun, which is just a way worse version of the Thunder Gun. And they did make it a little bit better later on, but it's still worse. And then the Wonderwaff Sniper, which just isn't, you know, they just don't work. So overall, you know, Tag der Toten, it is interesting, and I do think it's better than Alpha Omega and Blood of the Dead, but it's still just not a great map. So overall, it's gonna go into the fine tier for me. I think just right here at the top, right below town, right above Nocturne Toten. I feel like it's a good spot. I feel like I could even move it up to good, maybe, but it's such a letdown. I feel like I can't do that. So now we come into Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7. Definitely can't rank Cold War here. Haven't played that game, but Terminus, definitely a really cool expansion. Definitely was from what I know from Cold War, definitely was one of the most expansive modern zombies experiences. The boss fight's very interesting. It is, you know, a little bit of a one-off, but it's just very fun, cool map to play. Definitely the Beam Smasher too is a really cool wonder weapon. So the, you know, Terminus, I think it's a solid, good map. I would put it, honestly, you know, it actually, the funny thing, it's very similar to Zetsubou no Shima and like vibe and everything, but I actually prefer I don't know that I necessarily prefer the wonder weapon quite, but I do prefer the boss fight for sure and the overall arc of the map. So I think it's gonna go above Zetsubou, and at that point probably just above Keynote or Toten as well. Probably top of good tier here. Actually, I'm gonna go all the way up to bottom of great tier. I think it's a really solid map. And I'll try to, with these last ones, kind of ignore the difference in the modern zombies mechanics and the past zombies mechanics. I mean, I know it's a big part of the gameplay, but at the end of the day, a map is a map, and so, you know, I try to imagine what they would play like in both cases, and I think Terminus is a really solid map all around. Liberty Falls, you know, kind of, it's okay. It's just a grinding map on, you know, there's nothing really all that special about it, honestly. It did have the upgraded version of the jet gun, which was actually fun to use for once, but just, it's just kind of there, and you know, for that reason, it's fine. I'd probably put it like, right below Shino Numa. You know, there's nothing that special about it, but it's fun to play. Next, we got Citadel de Mor. Really, really cool aura of a map. The boss fight's really awesome. The elemental swords are really cool wonder weapons. It plays okay into the high rounds. The high rounding aspect isn't totally there, but it overall is definitely a really solid map. And I think probably the best map on BO6, just a little bit above Terminus. So for that reason, for me, it's gonna go probably just above Doris up here into great. I think it is a great map. Next we have the Tomb. You know, huge letdown. Brought the Ice Staff back, not even any of the rest. Not even a Wonder Weapon quest. The boss fight's really kind of odd. You just fight the Sentinel artifacts. It works, and it's not a terrible map. It was just a huge letdown from what it should have been. Definitely the weakest part of BO6 as well. I think for that, you know, it's fine, but I think it's got to go bottom of fine, even below Blood of the Dead. It's just a little bit too basic and didn't really deliver. Next we got Shattered Veil. Really cool, actually, map. I really enjoy the aura of the map. It's fun that, you know, you do just have like kind of the Elemental Mark II situation again, but you also do have the Wonderwaff So, you know, you have a few options there. The boss fight is really quite sick, actually. I think that's easily the coolest boss fight in BO6. Um, you know, that gives it a lot of points. The whole painting step, too, is really fun. But overall, I think Shattered Veil probably gonna also be a great map, but probably just between the Giant and Ascension here. I feel like it's a good spot for it. And then Reckoning, you know, both versions of the boss fight for this are just kind of like, and the map is okay. The Gorg effects is like kind of fun. At least, you know, it's a unique wonder weapon, but and then the Uber classes are super annoying. So it's okay. Definitely weaker than I think Citadel, Shattered, and Terminus. I think, you know, a little stronger than Liberty Falls probably. It actually had a little bit more to offer, but probably gonna put it like top of C tier, just above Tog. I think that's a decent spot for it. Um, yeah, I think that brings us up to this point. So now we got the final set of maps here. A little bit of Black Ops 7. I'm gonna rank these two last, and I'll just run through these survival maps real quick. I think the strongest survival map here is probably just Van Dorn Farm. It's a little bit more accessible. You actually do get to turn on the power. Um, you know, it's not there's nothing too special about it. You know, growing the plant's kind of fun. It's kind of like ranking town. You know, there's nothing too much to the map. It's more of a grinding map, but I think this is probably the best of these three by a little bit, feeling wise or for longevity. So I think for that, you know, it's gonna go in probably good, maybe just right below Revelations here. I can't put it above Revelations or anything of that scale because it just doesn't offer that much. It's a survival map. Exit 115 again, maybe just a little bit worse. This is probably I prefer probably Zarya actually, the Exit 115 here. It's a little bit more of a fun atmosphere, but they're both cool. I think these are really close to each other. And I'd probably put them more bottom of good tier, maybe Zarya into Exit. I think that's pretty good placement for this. All in all, they're pretty similar and they're fun experiences, but they're just a survival map. And our last two maps. So Ashes of the Damned, I think, you know, this is a really expansive map. The high rounding on it, assuming it's not a, you know, camping glitch strat, is actually pretty interesting, pretty fun. The Necrofluid Gauntlet is a really fun to use, really unique wonder weapon. Definitely, I think one of my favorite wonder weapons, even all the way back from BO3 and 4. Um, the map layout itself is pretty fun. You know, driving Tessie around. The boss fight is incredibly unique and definitely a fun challenge. Um, the overall Easter egg steps too, they're pretty fun. They're not like tedious, but they're challenging enough. You know, I would say Ashes of the Damned is probably a honestly, I think Ashes of the Damned is an excellent map in my opinion. It you know, no. I think it makes great. I don't know if I could quite put it in excellent. It's a really good layout. The Xursas are pretty fun, you know. I mean, I don't really have any problems with it. Maybe a little bit of recency bias, but I think it's gonna go just right at the top of A tier here for me. Actually, I feel like no, I feel like I have to put it below Call of the Dead. Now, Astra Malorum, this one's a little yeah. I really like Astra Malorum. I think it's one of my favorite Easter eggs, honestly, of all time. It's very linear, but they're all fun steps that make sense. The boss fight's a really good challenge and like takes a little while to get familiar with, but it's very fun. The Wonder Weapon is awesome. Love the LGM. It's very unique and does a good job. I think Oscar up to round 50 is fine. He's a healthy challenge and he's totally avoidable. Not really any issues. Obviously, the biggest glaring issue with this map, which is a little hard to hold against it, but just round 51 on, obviously Oscar becomes an absolute menace, and it's just kind of a nightmare, honestly, after round 51. But that really only harms the high rounding aspect of this map, which isn't really my thing for the most part. I'm more of a Easter egg guy, so for that, you know, I really enjoy Astra Malorum. Obviously, best skybox of all time too. Very beautiful map, and it has some really fun side Easter eggs too. So for me personally, and again, you know, it's just an opinion, but I think Astra Malorum actually makes it to being an excellent map for me, an S tier map. And I think I can't really quite bring myself to put it above anything up here except for Origins. But yeah, I think this is going to be the final ranking. Um, Definitely happy with this. I think it came out well. And just looking for any last minute changes here, but I think I heavily agree with where everything is placed. So, thanks.